Greetings and thank you for visiting my channel. This broadcast is entitled Cult Stories, and the subject of this story is Charles Manson. Who was Charles Manson? Charles Manson was an American cult leader whose followers carried out several notorious murders in the late 1960s that resulted in a subsequent life imprisonment for Charles Manson. In 2017, Charles Manson died after spending more than 4 decades in prison. Also, Charles Manson, the American criminal, was at the helm of a murderous campaign with his followers that have been coined the Manson family cult that would make him arguably one of the most infamous figures in criminal history. One of the most heinous and talked about murders by the Manson family cult included the brutal slaying of the pregnant actress Sharon Tate and other Hollywood residents. Manson received the death penalty in 1971 that he was commuted to life in prison the following year. And here are just a couple of clips. And these clips are in the description under fair use.
It may have been 50 years ago, but time does nothing to ease the horror.
Whatever is necessary to do it.
And another clip, fair use, of Charles Manson again being denied parole.
Charles Manson, D33920, received California Department of Corrections on April the 22nd, 1971.
Charles Mills Maddox was born in 1934 Cincinnati, Ohio, to Kathleen Maddox, a 16-year-old girl who reportedly was both an alcoholic and prostitute. Again, Charles Manson was born Charles Mills Maddox on November the 12th, 1934. The Manson family cult. The family, as it was called, was a group of approximately 100 followers of Charles Manson, who strangely shared the same passion for an unorthodox lifestyle, if you will, which included the habitual use of hallucinogenic drugs such as LSD and magic mushrooms. The Manson family soon moved from San Francisco to what many called a deserted ranch in the San Fernando Valley. Many of Charles Manson followers included a small, hardcore herd, if you will, of impressionable young girls. They oddly, actually very bizarre in fashion, believed Manson's claim that he was Jesus and his prophecies of a race war. According to reports, Charles Manson was influenced by drugs such as LSD, but by works of art and music, most notably the song by the famous group The Beatles, entitled Helter Skelter, from the 1968 White Album. Helter Skelter, the true story of Manson murders, was later the title of a best-selling book about Manson and his crimes. Charles Manson had a strong belief and interest in Armageddon from the Book of Revelations, and it is reported he explored the teachings of Scientology and more cult churches such as the Church of the Final Judgment. Manson reflected personality traits and obsessions associated with schools of cult quasi-religious groups that began to emerge exponentially in the 1960s. He began to pathologically delude into believing that he was a harbinger of doom regarding the planet's future. The Manson family, including his young and extremely loyal disciples, is thought to have carried out 35 killings. Most of these cases were never tried, in part for the lack of evidence. The perpetrators had also been sentenced to life for the killings on August 9, 1969. Of Sharon Tate, Wolters Kurowski, Abigail Folger, Jay Sebring, and two more victims, August 10, 1969. Wealthy supermarket executive Lino LaBontia and his wife Rosemary. While Charles Manson took no part in the actual killings, he did direct 4 of his most obedient followers, Charles Tex Watson, Susan Atkins, Patricia Krenwinkel, and Linda Kasabian, to the address and directed them to kill everyone.
It may have been 50 years ago, but time does nothing to ease the horror.
Whatever is necessary to do it.
Charles Manson, B33920, received California Department of Corrections on April the 22nd, 1971.
It is said that the motive behind these heinous acts was the philosophy of Manson, which was the upcoming apocalypse. And according to Manson, Helter Skelter was the uprising of a racial war between, and I quote, blackies and whiteys. He would gain from the racial war by hiding himself and his family in a cave located in Death Valley until the quote-unquote war ended. He would facilitate this war by killing whiteys and implicating African American communities with such acts of disposing of victims' wallets in areas highly populated by African American residents. The investigation into the murder of Sharon Tate, who is pictured here, who was found by the housekeeper along with other bodies and called LAPD officers. Initially, in the Tate murder investigation, the home caretaker was arrested because he was found at the scene. He was subsequently released after he successfully passed a polygraph test. Although the LASD made contact with the LAPD regarding the striking similarities of the Tate and Hinman murders, the LAPD was insistent that the Tate murder was the direct result of a drug transaction. The continuing criminal activity in the Manson family aided police authorities in apprehending more than a dozen individuals. While the Manson family was in Death Valley digging into the ground for what was known as the bottomless pit, they burned machinery belonging to the Death Valley National Monument. Burning the machinery led police officers to raid Death Valley ranches, where they found multiple stolen vehicles and they made multiple arrests. On June 15, 1970, the Tate LaBankia trial began against Charles Manson, Watson, Atkins, and Kuhwinkle, and 7 counts of murder and 1 count of conspiracy is what the individuals aforementioned mentioned were charged. Manson, as you can see in this photo, carved an X on his forehead in objection to the withdrawn permission. Manson was permitted by the court to act as his own attorney. However, after several violations of conduct, that permission to represent himself was withdrawn. Thus, the X was carved in his head as a show of objection to the withdrawn permission. Charles Manson aggressively vocalized his views and opinions regarding testimonies and statements made by the prosecution. A memorable moment occurred when Manson and the judge, during the trial, fell into a disagreement, resulting in Manson physically throwing himself at the judge, shouting, and I quote, "Someone should cut your head off." Soon after, the Manson family women started to chant in Latin in support of Manson's outburst. Manson was imprisoned in California's Corcoran State Prison. He was denied parole 7 times. And this was one of those times. Again, fair use.
Charles Manson, B33920, received California Department of Corrections on April the 22nd, 1971.
On January 1st, 2017, Manson was taken to the hospital and was found to be suffering from gastrointestinal bleeding. Even though very ill, he was returned to prison. On November 15th of 2017, he was taken back to the hospital, and 4 days later, Charles Manson died from a cardiac arrest resulting from respiratory failure and colon cancer. Charles Manson was 83 years old at the time of his death. Susan Atkins was serving a life sentence in California until her death on September 24th, 2009. She was 61. Patricia Krenwinkel is serving her life sentence at the California Institution of Women in Chino, California. She had been denied parole for a total of 14 times, and that was as of 2017. As of 2018, Leslie Van Houten is currently housed at the California Institution for Women in Frontier, California. She, as of 2018, had been denied parole for a total of 21 times. And Charles Tex Watson is currently serving his life sentence at the Richard J. Donovan Correctional Facility in San Diego, California. Steve Rogan was paroled in 1985, and Linda Kasabian was granted immunity for being the key witness for the prosecution and left California after the trial. The Tate resident, and again, Sharon Tate, who was brutally murdered. The Tate residence has been demolished and a new mansion has been built on the property. The home still remains vacant. The LaBonkia House is a private residence and was offered for sale in 2019. Again, Charles Manson and his family, the Manson family, were the family who was a cult in the late 60s, was responsible for over 35 murders. Most notably, the heinous murder of Sharon Tate, the actress, who was pregnant at the time. There have been many cults. However, this and Charles Manson arguably is the most infamous in American history. Thank you for tuning in to this broadcast, and be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Again, thank you for tuning in to this broadcast of Cult Stories. Charles Manson.